Hi everyone, my name is Manish. Welcome to Manish's Niche. Today I want to talk about a topic I've just been digging into recently, quantum mechanics. Very exciting. So the thing that prompted me to make this video was finding myself going down the rabbit hole of learning about quantum mechanics, how that works from you could say the mainstream science narrative, mathematics, formulas, application to physics, and then also coming across some videos talking about quantum field meditation. Now, meditation is going to be a big theme of this channel. I've got many more videos coming up on that, including some live meditations. And the more I explored that, the more I felt like this particular public figure was not really doing quantum justice from a science perspective. At the same time, I feel that science is missing some key elements for their understanding. And so today I'm just going to throw some ideas together, see what sticks. This is completely off the cuff. I'm just sharing some thoughts that have been bubbling in my head the last few hours, really. So first up, what is quantum? Quantum mechanics is the study of very small things. Quantum, I believe the origin of the root word is to do with discrete things, very small things, as small as you can get. So quantum mechanics is about the study of particles that are so small that they behave very strangely. So in the classical mechanics world, the field of objects and gravity and physics and all these things, we can use formulas and observations to understand the universe and how we can predict how things will happen, which has proven very successful for us. We've built many amazing technologies with that knowledge. But when you get down to really small things, they don't behave in the same way. You get particles like electrons and protons that will completely disappear from one location and reappear somewhere else. You'll get something called quantum tunneling. It's called when an electron will not just basically teleport across space, but teleport through solid objects, solid barriers. So this is actually used right now in like transistors and electronics in your smartphone you're watching this on, where what's called a semiconductor has multiple layers of different materials, and they'll use that quantum effect where electrons will, in certain situations, basically tunnel their way through a barrier to enter another zone, and they can use this as like a buffer zone to store persistent memory. Haven't fully understood that yet, but it's very interesting how that all works. So that's the quantum world. What also makes it really puzzling for scientists is that it not only does it sort of violate the expectations around things moving in a linear way, it also does weird things with what's called superposition. So classically this is discussed in the double slit experiment, where you have two openings where you shine a light through at the same time, a laser, and what is observed, if you're not watching the system, this is where it gets really wooey for scientists. If you're not watching the system, but you later observe the results, you'll see that it's photons, pass through both slits of this experiment to hit a wall in the back of the room and create some interference patterns. And that only works if the light is functioning as a wave. But if you watch the system, if you've got a camera pointed at it or a human observer in the room looking at it at the time you're doing this experiment, you will see a photon pass through only one slit and hit the wall only once, which is really weird. So this is what's known as the wave-particle duality, if you dive into this in science teachings. Now, it's really weird from a pure science perspective, But now I'm going to bring back the spiritual angle to this. So what's sometimes talked about if you spend enough time looking at things like meditation and spiritual experiences, it could be other, like certain religious teachings, or it could be spiritual gurus who have achieved a certain level of awareness or mastery over themselves or the world around them. You'll hear people talking a bit about consciousness and about energy and frequency. And you know that weird thing I told you about where if a scientist is in the room observing this experiment, it changes the result? Well, that's really easily explained by this idea of consciousness itself having power. So you could say that the consciousness is a field that permeates all existence. Just like we have gravity that can act at very long distances, we have consciousness that can act on other objects. So that's part of the difference between these two worlds. Another part, though, is that so for example, there's something called the uncertainty principle, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle it's often called, where if you try and measure the position of a particle really closely, you can get that position, but you have no idea where it's going. And if you measure where it's going really well, its speed, its velocity, you don't know where it is. And so you have to balance, like pick which one of these two properties do you want to examine. There's another property too. Do I want to get to this now? Yeah, let's go back to what I was saying about quantum particles moving around, appearing to instantaneously disappear from one location and reappear somewhere else a short distance away. So these two aspects of particles, science really doesn't have an explanation for how or why that works. We just know that it works, and we can build technology off that. But there's an idea bouncing around in spiritual circles now that our reality is not made of linear time and space, but that time and space themselves are projections from a higher dimension, you could say. A place where there is no time, where there is no space, where there is just consciousness. And so from that place, we move through time almost like we're moving through space. And you can backtrack and move sideways, and you can navigate that. And so rather than having this sequential flow of time, you have these snapshots, moment by moment. Just like when you have a film strip, if you've ever seen a physical strip of 35mm film or photos, or if you watch anime and you just play your video through one frame at a time, you'll see that it's made up of a series of static drawings that are played fast enough that it looks like a moving picture. In fact, that is what video is. So scientists actually have a name for this already. It's called Planck time. Max Planck discovered the smallest possible unit of time that he could measure anything on. And so far that's the smallest unit we've found. So it appears that the universe progresses through a sequence of frames at the rate of Planck time, which is extremely, extremely small. Billions of times a second, I think. So from that perspective, we can see now that this instantaneous movement of quantum particles is really just in progressing through frames of the universe. And now we come back to the idea I touched on earlier about consciousness. So consciousness can change these quantum particles by changing the results of the experiment. And there's some people who talk about using this quantum awareness for meditations, quantum field meditations, a term often thrown around, to create healing or manifestation or other transformations. And I think there's a few people in particular who've really popularized this, and I think they've done great work, but I think they're kind of oversimplifying a little bit. The idea of harnessing this awareness about the quantum realm or quantum mechanics is about understanding that our consciousness has an influence over physical reality. And the more we focus that consciousness, the more we can shift reality. How we do that is a whole separate conversation. I'm by no means a master at this, but I think it's very interesting to think about these two different worlds of what I'm calling spirituality and science, and how I think there's some very interesting, very strong links between these two worlds. I hope this shed some light on the topic. It's given me a lot to think about as well. Please give me your thoughts in the comments.